Hi there, I'm Jeff of Jeff Werthmann-Radnich Coaching, and I help people to figure out their path forward in life. And today I wanted to talk for a few minutes about just showing up. Typically I'll, at least have an idea of what I'm going to talk about. I don't script things out, but, some ideas, at least in my head, of, what I want to discuss. But today I thought I'd forego that and just show up and show the importance, and the challenges behind just doing that. Because when we're trying to go after something that we want in life, of creating the life that we want, that's hard. It's challenging, and we're never sure of what the next step is. We kind of figure that out as we go along, and it's scary. It's challenging. And that you just don't know, you know, what to do. At each step along the way. And so what do? You do the best that you can with what you have and what you know, and trusting in yourself that you got yourself to this part or this point, you can figure it out from here. And that's really hard for us to do, especially if we're coming from a space where, maybe we've had the same job for the last 10 years, 20 years, or, we have a routine, we get used to it. We know what to expect from day to day. Challenges, of course, come up through our work or interactions with other people, but, we don't really, have, a lot of mystery there. It's routine, and that's okay. I definitely don't want to downplay that. Even in business, after you transition, having that routine, that's great. That means you can come in and you know what you're going to do with your day, and you can accomplish those goals that you set out for yourself. But when we're going through a transition, when we're trying to figure out what our next steps are for ourselves, that's the scary part, because we don't know what it looks like on the other side of that choice, or the other side of, that leap that we make. And, the most important thing that we can do, just show up. It doesn't matter if you show up perfectly. You don't have to. That's not the point. The point is just to show up. Show up scared. Show up, just, feeling like, God, I'm tired of waiting. I want to do this. I want to make this happen. And I'm tired of waiting for that. And, you might be able to hear it in my voice right now. I get really emotional about this because, you know, it is such a challenge, and it's hard for everyone. You're not the only one. You're not the only one who says, well, I tried that a few years ago, but it was too hard, or I couldn't, figure things out, or, the timing was wrong, or, I didn't have the time to invest in that. That's okay. That was a few years ago. You've learned more from, between then and now, and you're ready for, to try again, and perhaps you try again and you stumble. Stumbling's okay. Feeling nervous is okay. Making mistakes is more than okay. It's what we learn from the most. But the point is that we keep moving forward. That we keep, moving towards the goal and the life that we want to create for ourselves. You know, because when it comes right down to it, we're the only ones who are responsible for making that happen. And that's the other part of it. We're the only ones responsible for making that happen. So if we want for that to happen, we have to put in the time and the effort and the emotional stress and the confusing feelings and the what ifs, you know, and trust that we'll get there. Each day it's waking up, with that trust that, I stumbled yesterday, or I stumbled last week, or I stumbled last month, you know. I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to find a way to make this happen. And, reassuring ourselves, through, however it works for you, through journaling, through looking in the mirror and saying that to yourself, through, any tool that you happen to come across that works for you. You know, everyone's different. Everyone's motivated or, attracted, to different things, different tools. So, you know, try things out, find what works for you, help yourself to continue to move forward. So, it's about trusting the process, trusting yourself, and just putting the effort in each and every day, writing it out. What am I going to do today to help myself accomplish my goals? It doesn't have to be huge. It can be 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. The point is that you're putting effort in. And, with that mindset, we start to see, all right, well, I'm putting 5 minutes in. That's good. And the reality is, of course, the more effort, and the more time and energy we put into something, the more that we see results quicker in general. That's not always true, but in general, that's how it goes. But more so it's for ourselves, for our personal growth, for us getting to where we want to get to, is to keep moving forward at whatever pace is manageable for us to maintain. If we're stopping, we're spending, 20 hours a week on something for a month, and then we're like, this is too much, and then we cut back to zero. That's going to set us back more than if we were putting in 10 minutes a day and, keeping that pace up. So, I hope this has been helpful to you, and a reminder that you can accomplish what it is that you want to do. It's about, trusting in yourself. It's about setting those goals and setting things down on paper so that we're not thinking about it throughout the day. At 6 o'clock, I work on my business. At 6 o'clock, I, search for that dream job. Whatever that, may be that you're working on. The less we think about it, the more that we do, the more actions we take. The more that we feel like, we're alive. We're going somewhere and we're creating the life that we wanted for ourselves. And, in that, it's not necessarily the destination as it is the journey. The growth that we gain from feeling all of this, all of this tension, all of this fear and doubt, and still doing it anyway. And getting to the other side and going, yeah, that was scary, but I did it. And I can do that again, and that's how we grow. So, again, I hope this has been helpful to you. If this is a challenge for you, feel free to leave a message. In the notes here, you can email me at jeff@jwrcoaching.com, and I would love to talk with you and see, how we might be able to work together if that's what you're looking for, or just answer your questions. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you again next Wednesday. Take care.